Hello, my name's Kingsley Singleton, Deputy Editor of Digital Photo, and welcome to the second part of this Photoshop video lesson on creating surreal composite images. In the first lesson, we looked at how to add these monstrous fans into the landscape using a combination of layers and layer masks. And this time around, we're going to complete the image by bringing in some paper planes. We're going to stick one of them right in the ground as though it's crash landed. And we're going to use the same systems that we did before, just helping us tie everything in together, making sure that all our angles and our lighting are correct, so that we end up with a really well put together image. Before we continue though, one thing it's really worth doing when working on extended projects like this is saving your work as you go. In this case, we need to retain all of the layers that we're working on, so we need to save the file as a Photoshop document. To do that, quite simple, just come up to File and down to Save As, and it should default to a Photoshop format at the bottom there. If it doesn't, just pick it from the list. It's the top one. And we'll call this one biggin_hill_prog.psd, because that's the one we're working on, the one in progress. Click Save, OK, and then if we want to close down our work and return to it later, the next time we load it up, it'll have all these layers intact. Okay, so moving on, the first thing we need is a paper plane. What I'll do is come up to File again then, down to Open, and we'll pick paperplane1.jpg. Click Open, and it'll appear on screen. And as you can see, that's me holding it in front of the office there. No expense spared, but what it did mean is that I could match up the lighting exactly as it appears in the other shot. So if we look closely at this picture, we can see that the sun once again is coming from somewhere up here, somewhere up the top left, and we've got that shadow raking down the back of the paper plane, which is going to tie everything in nicely. Now we could bring our paper plane in to our main composition in the same way as we did the fans, but a much better way is to make a selection of it first, because it's a much simpler shape. We certainly wouldn't be wanting to make a selection of one of these fans. That would be a bit of a nightmare really, but because we've got a nice simple dart shape here, we can come over first to the zoom tool. I think we'll get in close, and then we'll pick up the polygonal lasso tool from the toolbox, and we'll just start up here at this top corner, and we'll click down and around the edge of the plane, working quite quickly. It's funny, it's not quite as straight as I would have thought having made it. It's got a few sort of curves in it, this plane. Hasn't crashed too many times, but it's been a little bit battered around. Don't worry about this thumb here. We'll just basically roughly guess where the shape of the plane was going. A little extra part there. And keep working down around the front of the plane, working quite fast in this case, but as we often say, when you're doing this at home, take a bit more time over it, get in nice and close, and make a really accurate selection. So now we're working back up the other side, and I'm just holding down that space bar to bring up the hand tool so that I can scroll around the picture from point to point. Oops, made a little mistake there, so we'll just track back ever so slightly. Keep working back up this side. Nearly there now. Back over the top, down the back, and right back up to where we started. And as soon as we get there and give it a final click, the marching ants appear all the way around the plane. Now that little area where I went wrong, we've got a little cut in there, so we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is zoom right in on it there, come back to the polygonal lasso tool, then hold down the shift key on the keyboard, and we get that little plus sign next to it. And then I'll just copy over that area, and once I do, we return to the shape that we actually want. Now our selection of the paper plane is made, we can come up to Refine Edge, and I'm just going to use a feather radius of 0.5 pixels in here, just to soften that edge ever so slightly so it's not too crisp and fake looking. That's our feather box there, 0.5 pixels. We can click OK, and then press Ctrl and C on the keyboard to copy all of those areas within the marching ants into memory. Once you've done that, we can close down paperplane1.jpg, and back on our main image we can press Ctrl and V, or we can come up to Edit and down to Paste, and in it'll drop. And now, just as we did with those fans, click on the Move tool, back up to the Options bar and click on the Show Transform Controls button there, and then holding down Shift to constrain those proportions again, we'll just resize it, and we'll pop it in around about there. Something like that should be fine, I think, so we can click the tick. And it's really important to point out at this stage that we in no way want to do any kind of rotation to our plane at all. The reason? Well, that's because it's going to spoil all the good work we did when shooting it. We want that angle of lighting there to remain exactly as shot. If we bring it down like this, well, it looks like the sun is coming in from directly above. That's not going to work at all, and it's going to foul up the whole thing. So we'll set that back at 0 degrees, and we can click the tick again to get rid of that transforming box, and then untick Show Transform Controls to get rid of the bounding box there. Now, a bit like our fans, when we first dropped them into the picture, it's looking a little bit stuck on and unrealistic. We're going to take care of that in a minute, but the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this offending thumb right there. We'll zoom in on it, we don't want that, and in fact it looks like I've just made a slightly poor selection of that area too, so we can chop that bit off right now. Polygonal lasso, and in fact what I'll do is just click in here and follow that line up so that we get a good straight line there. Marching ants become active. Once again, we want to have the same amount of feather. We don't want any variation there, so it's 0.5 pixels again. Click OK, and then we can just hit backspace to get rid of that area. Control and D to deselect. And to get on with removing the offending thumb, what I first want to do is make a selection of the whole paper plane, and I can do that by holding down the Control key and clicking on layer 5. What that's going to do is select all of the pixels on that layer, and because the only pixels on that layer are the paper plane, you'll see that the marching ants pop up all the way around the outside again. The reason this is going to help us is because I need to clone out the thumb, but I don't want to go over the edge. With that selection active, I won't do that. I'll have a nice crisp edge to my cloning work, and it'll look as if that thumb was never there. So come over to the clone stamp tool again. We'll blow that one up to around about 40 pixels. Make sure it's got a soft edge, maybe 50 pixels, and then we'll simply, much as we did behind the fan in the last part on layer 2, and also to remove the reflection on the fan itself, we simply click to select what we call a clean area of this sort of grey shadowed part of the plane, just to sample it, and then we just paint over that thumb, and there, just like that, you see I'm being able to paint right up to that edge, and I'm not going over into the sky. And any little blotchy areas that you want to get rid of, just click on the healing brush tool, bring that one size down, and very much like the clone stamp tool, we'll just click over those areas and we'll get a nicer blend to them. So no more thumb. I think that's looking pretty good. We can zoom out a little bit, and now I can get rid of those marching ants by pressing Control and D. Now what I really want is for this plane to look like it's kind of plummeted into the ground and got stuck there. I want its nose to be looking like it's gone, you know, a sort of a foot into the turf or so. Once again, to achieve this, I'm going to use a layer mask, so we'll click on the Add Layer Mask icon, and there it appears next to layer 5. Come back over to the brush tool, drop that one in size, down to about 60 or 70 pixels. We'll zoom in on the nose of the plane. At the moment you can see it just looks like it's kind of hovering over the turf, but if I just bring in that opacity up to 100%, if I just paint in over the nose up to about there, it now looks like it's sitting behind that little bit of grass. Just harden up the edge slightly, bring the brush size down a bit like we did with the fan, and we can click sort of on it to give it a kind of a slightly textured edge, and all of a sudden it looks a lot more like it's just kind of nosedived into the grass and got stuck. Something that's going to help it a lot more though is adding a shadow. At the moment, looking at the lighting on the plane, it certainly would be casting a shadow, and it would be positioned somewhere around here, just judging by the angle of light, probably coming out to about there. What we want to do then is create a shadow roughly the same shape as the plane, but make it a bit smaller and sit it down here on the grass. So what I'm going to do is first create that shadow using a selection of the existing plane. Once again, we'll hold down Control and click on the layer 5 thumbnail to select all those pixels on the layer. Then we'll need a new layer to put our shadow on. We don't want it on the same layer as layer 5, that won't work at all. So we'll come up to Layer, down to New and pick Layer. Click OK. And then with our marching ants still running merrily around the edge of the plane there, come back up to Edit and down to Fill. In here we want to use black as the content. Give that a click, make sure the mode's set to normal and the opacity 100% and click OK. Now immediately there our plane disappears, but just using the Move tool we can click and drag our shadow away from it, press Ctrl and D to get rid of those marching ants, and then switching those transform controls back on, what we'll do is we'll just start clicking and rotating our shadow roughly into place. What we want to do is distort it slightly as well, so we'll hold down the Control key, just drag those corner handles down, and what I'm looking for here is just to follow that diagonal line of the shadow down to about there, just where that shadow would actually fall. So we'll drag it in a little bit as well. Something like that is starting to work pretty well, I think. We've got that nice kind of realistic looking shape. The dart shape, the same as the paper plane itself, and the length of the shadow is working well too, so we can click the tick, get rid of those transform controls there. And the last thing to do before we take a look at the blending mode is just to click in the layers palette and drag layer 6 down below layer 5. As soon as I do that there, just keep your eye on the image, you'll see it drop in behind the plane, and then we can click and drag it again, and just by adding that shadow we really tie the paper plane into its surroundings, a bit like we did when we brought those clouds in over the top of the fans. And once again, it's all about adding that little bit of realism to the picture. It's a surreal image, but giving it that photoreal edge is what's going to make it work. So we're positioning it somewhere around about there seems to be working pretty well, and then we don't want a sort of a completely black shadow, of course, so we'll change the blending mode of the layer, just making sure layer 6 is still highlighted there in the layers palette. Click next to where it says normal, come down to soft light, and just like that we have a nice believable shadow to our paper plane. It could probably do with a little bit of softening though, so we'll come up to filter, down to blur and pick Gaussian blur again. We don't want to make it too soft, but maybe kind of 2 or 3 pixels will probably help. Click OK, and I think that's starting to work really well. Just as with the fans, we've got a few more paper planes on the CD that you can pop into your composition, so I'm going to do that and I'll join you in a moment. Okay, so here we are with our extra paper planes added into the composition. As I said, you'll find them on the CD marked paper plane 2, 3 and 4.psd, and we've dropped them in the exact same way as we did our first paper plane, and just added a shadow to these two here as well, all using the layers palette. Once again, we're starting to build up a fairly healthy layers palette here, and now that the image is pretty much complete, we can just zoom in and have a good look around it, making sure that we're happy with all the work that we've done. Of course, because everything is existing on different layers, we can do any kind of fine-tuning that we need to. Just down here it looks like we've missed a little bit of that original mask on our first fan there, so let's click back on that one, make sure the layer mask is active, back over to the brush tool, painting in black, and then we'll just remove that area from view. And it's very important that you have a good look around your pictures in this way, because you don't want to have done all that hard work only to be found out by some kind of nasty glaring error at the end of it. So as I say, have a good look around, make sure you're happy with everything, and then finally we can save our picture one last time as a layered document. It'll take a bit of time when working on large complex documents like this, but we want to keep our layered version in case we want to come back to it and rectify any errors, or add more paper planes, or do whatever you like. If you're ready to finish the image though, and you want to print it out or show it off online, just come up to Layer, down to Flatten Image, and all of those layers there in the Layers palette will be collapsed into a single background layer. Just taking a step backwards though, let's take a look at how we built up our image from that original layer. We start off with our empty background image, but we know where the lighting is, so we can start adding our extra components based on it, shooting our fans separately with the lighting in exactly the same place, and making sure that we've got a nice bright blue sky behind them, making it much easier to insert them seamlessly into the composition. More fans come along after that. We change their size, making them seem further away in the frame, and we tuck them behind the clouds to give them that sense of depth. Then we bring in our paper planes, we tie them into the scene again using shadows and a little bit of layer masking just to make our first paper plane there seem like it's kind of buried in the ground, and then we top it off with our extra little squadron of paper planes making their way down to the earth, and that's our multi-layered surreal composite completed. Of course, layers were an enormous part of the process, but let's not forget that shooting was a really important part of it too. Without tying up all those shadows and reflections and angles, it wouldn't have looked half as good, so it's definitely something to consider when you're shooting to create images of this kind. Give it a go using those practice images that are on the CD. Make sure you work through the separate steps until you're really comfortable with putting together images of this kind, and then have a think about what you can create yourself. And once you've made your very own surreal composite images, make sure you don't hide them away on your computer. Send them in to us or post them up online at the photoanswers.co.uk gallery, and you'll be able to let everyone see the great images you've come up with. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.